Hi everyone, you're very welcome to our channel Narc Con, where today we're going to deep dive into exactly what a narcissist is by looking at 7 questions that a narcissist can't truthfully answer. I believe healing is expedited by understanding what the problem was you were dealing with that has left you perhaps so devastated after a relationship has ended with a narcissist. Because if you understand the cause and the problem, you can match it with an appropriate solution. If you don't know what caused the state that we find ourselves in, it's much more difficult to climb out of it and to go on to thrive in our lives. So I'm going to do another podcast on how to actually put that into action and how to expedite our healing as well. But let's get into this one for today, because if you really understand the disordered nature of the narcissistic personality disorder, you will stop having that toxic hope or stop banging your head against a wall, hoping that that person is going to have a different thought process. It would be like trying to change your own thought process in relation to the fundamental way your neural pathways work, and one synapse goes to the other to give you the outcome from the way you think for a solution to a problem. The narcissist has his brain is set up in a certain way that the narcissism cuts in when you would say, you or I would make a decision that makes logical sense to us. The narcissist's narcissism cuts in like a virus in their program and doesn't allow that connection to happen. So let's get into it, because by understanding what we were dealing with, we will be so much less frustrated, particularly if we have to deal with a familial narcissist or deal with narcissism, malignant narcissism in the workplace. So the first question I would say, if you were to ask a narcissist, and they'll ask you this because it gives them a lot of information on how to operate you, how to manage you, and how to manipulate you, and how to use this particular aspect in a smear campaign about you. If you ask a narcissist, what are your deepest hurts in your life or regrets that have come up for you? They would definitely see that as a threat. They would definitely not answer it truthfully. They may bring a smidgen of the truth in, or they would give you an answer that would manipulate you, that would mirror you, and that would get them in the kind of victim presentation mentality. So there might be a smidgen of truth in that. They may start to believe what they're telling you is their deepest hurt, but you are not going to get the narcissist to answer that truthfully, because in truth, the narcissism cuts in and says, we're not going there, matey. That's too hurtful. That's too shameful. And we're going to use this opportunity this person is asking us about ourselves to manipulate them, because we're not looking at that and they're not looking at that. Nobody's getting in there. This is where the narcissistic personality, disordered personality, has chopped in to become the person that you're talking with or speaking with. Number 2, why is it so difficult to admit flaws or to admit that you're wrong? You may have, had an experience with a narcissist, being in a relationship with them, and you know that they'll never admit to being wrong. They'll say, I'm sorry you feel like that. I'm sorry that's your opinion, but I'm not wrong. No matter how much logic you bring to the situation, no matter how many facts you present to the narcissist, they will twist and turn and twist and turn. They're never wrong. And again, that narcissism virus cuts in to the thought process with the narcissist and will not let them go there. It cuts in to protect them, the true self, from ever being wrong. So they've made themselves into this superior being. So if you ask them, why they have a problem admitting they're wrong, they're going to say, I don't have a problem admitting I'm wrong. I'm just never wrong. If they were truthful, they would say, I'm just never wrong. That's what the narcissism feeds back to them. When you give them the opportunity to introspect, you ask them an introspective question as to have a look at themselves and, wonder about why they are never accountable for anything, why they never admit to being wrong. The only time they'll admit to being wrong is as a lie to you, to get you on side again, like, say, if they left the relationship or, there was a breakdown or whatever, and you wanted them to go to therapy because they had an issue. They go to therapy to get back in with you in order to dump you and prove to you that you were wrong. It wasn't them that was wrong. So I hope that makes sense. So the narcissism will not let them do that deep dive and introspection. So if you want to keep asking the narcissist or keep proving, and that we do this, because we cannot understand how the narcissist doesn't understand or even want to look at the fact that they might be wrong, so that they could learn something, so that they could, go into some type of a personal development where they can reach a deeper understanding of life and themselves and how they relate to other people. But that's not what they want. They have a very fixated idea about the fact that they're always right. Even to the extent, I remember, and I think I've used this example before, with a narcissist, that I said to, I was saying some kind of a sentence that had the word in cahoots, that I think that they're in cahoots with each other. And the narcissist said, no, that's not correct. And I said, how do you mean it's not correct? And they said, no, the person is at cahoots with each other. And I said, I don't think that's right. You see, they're in cahoots means that the two of them are planning together and they've got each other's back. He said, no, it's at cahoots. And I said, would it be okay to look it up in the dictionary? And I looked it up. Still, no. The Oxford English Dictionary, no. Google, no. He was right and I was wrong. So that's insane, and that gets them into a lot of trouble in their lives because they can never admit to being wrong. You can just imagine the situations they would be in where that causes a problem, not just in a personal relationship, but in a work situation, in decision-making process. So there is no point. I remember thinking at that stage, this is insane. I don't need to be right, but this is right. Like, this is correct. So that's the stupidity of the narcissistic personality disorder. That's the awfulness. That's the patheticness. That's the sadness. Because you are going to only be able to have a limited relationship with that person. You're going to, if you want to have a relationship with a narcissist, say they're in your family or whatever situation you're in with one, these facts that we're talking about here or speaking about here need to be accepted, because otherwise you're literally banging your head off a wall and you're wasting your energy and you're causing yourself a lot of stress, angst and problems with the narcissist. And it's not going to, if you kind of don't take these on board, you're not going to be able to achieve anything with the narcissist. And it is possible to achieve things with a narcissist and to get them on side by speaking, treating, acting in certain ways, or at least enhance your chances, at least put you on a more equal footing of being able to communicate effectively with a narcissist. And if you understand these things, you'll really be able to understand where not to go. I'm sure we can look at where to go in another podcast. But this is pretty interesting. In my opinion, this is very educational stuff to understand this about narcissists. I see my co-producer is he's taking a bit of time out there. He really gets fed up with some of these chats, I think. Okay. And I think this is 3. Why do you need to impress strangers? Have you ever been with a narcissist who, when you go out, even to the store, they want the attention from everybody. You know, they'll do more than chat with the teller or the cashier. They will chat to people all around the store, and that's a lovely quality. But they're always trying to impress people in some way, like even by helping. You know, they can be helping out, which is a great benefit to another person. But what they're looking for is attention and adulation. And if they do get into a conversation with someone, they may start to overemphasize their success or their money or the car they drive, stuff like that, to actually try and make that person have admiration for them because of their materialism or whatever. Or they may say that they do a lot of good works because they feel that's very important. You know, things that people that are very secure within themselves, that have a very sound foundation, they may be the wealthiest people in the world, they may be the best people for doing good deeds. They do not need, and in fact, it's a bit abhorrent to them that they would go out and broadcast that everywhere. They don't do it, or they don't have all that money, or they don't, you know, have this talent to push at other people, to manipulate other people with. They don't need to do that. They're happy within themselves. But narcissists will either utilize what they already do have. You know, if you get a rich narcissist, they'll be flashing the cash, they'll be flashing the Rolex, they'll be doing whatever they need to do to impress whoever's in front of them if they so wish, and get attention and admiration, and somebody may be being impressed by them and kowtowing to them and being taken in by them. You know, it's a great pull people in. So why do you need to impress strangers so much? And they'll just say, I don't need to impress anybody. People are just impressed by me. And that's literally, I know it's crazy, but that's, you know, that's the type of answer you would get. You know, of course people are going to be impressed by me. Why wouldn't they? I'm amazing. That's really what the narcissist thinks. They don't see it as a weakness. They don't see it as something that, you know, a manipulation, because their narcissism tells them, I'm brilliant. You know, I'm so much better than everybody else. Everybody, of course, is interested in me because I'm totally unique. And everybody is unique, but their uniqueness puts them at a higher level than anybody else because of their narcissism, the viral narcissism that cuts into the normal thought processes. Okay, the next question a narcissist just can't truthfully answer. Why do you not respect the opinion of other people? Why do you have to invalidate other people's opinions? Why do you not kind of ever, you know, take on board what another person says and praise them and say, that's a great idea. I'm going to do that because it's better than my idea. And I'm going to tell everybody that it's your idea. Well, you know, my friends, I'm quite sure from experience, once there's a great idea floating around, the narcissist pulls it out of the hat and claims it as their own. And even though they may invalidate that person and say, no, I don't agree with that, I think we should do it this way, the next day that person is brushed off and the idea is implemented, and the person says to the narcissist, hey buddy, I'm glad you put my idea in place. The narcissist, what are you talking about? That was my idea. It's unbelievable. So the narcissism cuts down and they truly believe that it's their idea. And if you were to question them, do a deep dive on it and say, hey, Mr. or Mrs. Narcissist, you know, I was there yesterday and Jill gave that idea to you. The narcissist will say, well, I don't know what you were hearing, but I had spoken to Jill beforehand, before the meeting, about going, you know, in that type of direction. So Jill was only reiterating what I said. Or they'll say, yeah, you know, Jill had the basis of a good idea, but she just doesn't know how to put it in place. So I took the seed of the idea and I've expanded it into something workable. Does that in any way sound familiar? the narcissism will not let them accept that somebody else had a better idea than them, and the other people need to be put down, put in their place, so that they know who is actually superior in the room or in their lives or in their family. So that they wouldn't give you a truthful answer if you said, why do you take other people's ideas? They'd say, for goodness sake, would you get over yourself? You're just jealous of me because I have so many good ideas. And, of course I don't take other people's ideas. Anyway, my ideas are the best. So why would I want to take other people's ideas? Well, I'm guessing this sounds familiar. This is the type of thing they go on with. And if you get a pattern of all of these things happening together, you have got a personality disorder going on with the person you're dealing with. The next question. This is one I actually like. This is one I actually like because this is one that kind of they find it difficult to come up with a quick retort. If I'm such a bad person and you say all these bad things about me and I'm such a failure, well, why do you keep returning to me in the relationship? I mean, you've come back 3 or 4 times now and we've started the relationship again. So that doesn't make sense to me. Well, the narcissist, the way they'll rearrange that when the narcissistic virus comes in, their narcissism shuts down to not let them introspect or anything, not let them say, well, actually, it's not all you that's wrong, it's me that's wrong as well. So the things I said, that you were 100% to blame for the relationship breakdown, well, that's not right. That's not going to happen. What they may do to that is say, I'm a forgiving person. I know you have a lot of issues, but I have compassion for you and I'm prepared to help you work them out. That may be the type of retort you'd get. But you will not get accountability unless that doesn't work and you say, listen, I'll see you around now. Off you go with yourself on your little donkey. And then they'll say, well, maybe I did do a few things wrong. I mean, I have to, take accountability here and maybe we could go to therapy. They will say diddly squat to get back in. If they're focused on hoovering you and getting back into the relationship, because they have no stable into which to park donkey on themselves, or their other supply has let them down, excuse my sarcasm, but if they need you at a time, they will say whatever it takes. They will use words, manipulate and copy and mirror a normal functioning personality's way of being in order to manipulate you. But that won't be any kind of coming from any kind of normality of their disordered personality, if that makes sense. The next question would be, and of course they will like this if they're actually doing this at the moment, but if this isn't a manipulation they're currently, in the throes of using, and you sit down on a day where the relationship is going fine and you say, excuse me, Mr. Narcissist. And they say, yes, my dear, what would you like to ask? And you say, well, I'm flummoxed and perplexed as to why you dish out the silent treatment to me at different times. And of course, like if you're in the silent treatment and you ask that, like, why aren't you speaking to me? Well, they love that because then they can just ignore you. And that, is effectively implementing further and deeper the silent treatment as it's ongoing. But if you ask them this, even in a therapist session, why do you go silent on your partner and not speak to them? They will come up with a plethora of reasons, usually blame shifting onto the other person, that nothing else seems to work. So I have nothing left to say because, when I tell them what they're doing wrong, they don't listen to me and they don't change their behavior. So I have to just go silent. They're not going to say, well, I use it as a manipulation. It's very effective. It's part of my grooming process. It's part of getting a person under control. Duh. That's what they would say if they could answer it truthfully. But their narcissism justifies that, well, the silent treatment is an effective tool, communication tool to express my needs and let the other person know that I don't approve of the way they're treating me. And the therapist says, and Mrs. Narcissist, do you think that that's a healthy way to deal with issues in a relationship? And the narcissist says, too right it is. Definitely, it works. And the therapist then comes back and says, well, who does it work for and how does it improve the relationship? Well, it works for me and the other person does exactly what I tell them then in the future. And the therapist goes, personality disorder. If they haven't been cajoled and manipulated themselves, if they know that there is such a thing as, and put it in practice, that there's a narcissistic personality disorder. So these are so predictable. Every narcissist, with variations on the style, every narcissist has this virus in their brain that disallows them to think the way a normal person would think. They cannot take a deep dive. Deep dive is the true personality, or the true self is locked inside a vault. It cannot be accessed. The only time you might get a glimpse of the true self would be in a state of when there's a narcissistic total collapse, when none of their manipulations are working, when they have literally zero supply. Nobody's buying their BS again at the moment, and they're collapsed. You may see a pathetic version of a person there asking for help. But once that works, once the patheticness works, the narcissist the true self goes back into the vault because something has worked, and they hook on to whoever is giving them assistance when they thought they were finished, basically. I think the last two things I have that'll really, I hope, give you an insight into what and who a narcissist is, and the mental blocks they have, and the fact that they cannot answer your questions truthfully, is they want from you what they call unconditional love. Now that means that you don't have any boundaries, you don't have any opinions. You are a continual giver without questioning the authority, the godlike person that is the narcissist. So they say they believe in unconditional love. However, it is not reciprocated. Their unconditional love is, I will love you totally and wholly, provided you love me unconditionally. But my big condition is that you love me unconditionally in my version of what unconditional love is. And the very last thing I'll have to say, and I hope it's a good insight into narcissism, malignant narcissism, is that if you say to a narcissist, say in an interview, are you a good team player? Well, the narcissist will say, well, of course I am. I have a lot to offer a team. This is what I bring, and that's what I bring, and etc. But you put a narcissist in a team setting where they are equal to the other people in the team, and that's just not going to work. They need to be in charge, in control, and if they're not, they will be manipulating the team members and causing issues within the team, claiming other people's work, claiming other people aren't doing work, and generally causing a hullabaloo that crashes everything, really. They cannot be put in a team. It's going to be disastrous. They can effectively lead a team. They may not give very good credit to the members of the team. They may take all the praise for the work of the team. But effective team member, they're effective, but effective in a destructive way. They cannot equalize themselves to everybody else. And they have to take all the attention and credit. So if you're putting them in that situation, you're kind of giving them a feeding frenzy to cause a lot of disruption, get a lot of attention, claim other people's work, and actually destroy people they don't like within the team, and effectively not get the results in a peaceful way that may have been looked for. They may bring their talent to it, but in the heel of the hunt, the team would be far more productive without the narcissist in it. And I know you've probably heard the expression, it only takes one. It only takes one drop of poison in a pint of water to poison somebody. And that is effectively what the narcissist is, a drop of poison, if you're asking them to partake in a team work setting. That's it for today, guys. I hope that was useful. But they're the pillars of the way a narcissist thinks and operates. And honestly, trying to move those pillars around is going to give you a headache and give the narcissist a lot of attention and supply and a lot of your energy. So with that focus for your healing, if you're thinking, gosh, now I know about the narcissist, I think I could go back and reframe the relationship. That's what you would be dealing with going back. So you'd be getting on a hamster wheel again, and you're worth so much more than being on a hamster wheel for your life. So much more. Bye for now. We'll see you again very soon. Please take great care of yourself, particularly if you're in a difficult situation post the narcissist.